Hey folks, have you ever clicked add to cart on a laptop that looks like a dream on the product page, only to find it's a nightmare when you actually try to game on it? I've seen that happen a lot. People get dazzled by eye-catching specs, click through a bunch of reviews, and then end up with a machine that still feels sluggish, overheats, or just doesn't fit their daily routine. That's why today's deep dive is all about helping you avoid that mistake. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. If you've been hunting for a desktop replacement gaming laptop that can handle the newest AAA titles at high frame rates, run intensive creative workloads, and still let you travel with it, you've probably run into a lot of conflicting advice. Some reviewers say go for the biggest GPU, others say prioritize battery life, and still others warn you about bulky 18-inch machines that are hard to fit in a backpack. The Thunderobot 018 Pro 5090 lands right in the middle of that debate. It promises a 2.5K QHD Plus display at 240Hz, an Intel Core Ultra 9275HX CPU, an RTX 5090 GPU, 64GB of DDR5 RAM, and a 2TB SSD all in an 18-inch chassis. That's a mouthful, and on paper it looks like the ultimate all-in-one gaming workstation. But let's step back from that laundry list of specs and think about what you actually need when you open the lid. First, who will get the most out of this machine? If you're a competitive gamer who plays titles like Valorant, CS2, or Fortnite at ultra settings and needs a high refresh rate screen to shave off milliseconds, the 240Hz panel is a real win. The larger 18-inch size also gives you more screen real estate for multitasking. You can have a Discord chat, a streaming overlay, and the game itself all visible without squinting. For creators who edit 4K video or run 3D rendering software, the 64GB of RAM and massive SSD mean you won't be waiting on file transfers or running out of memory mid-project. If, on the other hand, you're a casual gamer who only plays once or twice a week, or you primarily use your laptop for office work and occasional streaming, this beast is probably overkill. You could get a 15-inch laptop with a GTX 4060, spend far less, and still have plenty of power for most indie games and productivity tasks. The Zero's weight and size, while still portable compared to a desktop, will feel more like a small monitor than a notebook you can toss into a backpack. Now, let's talk about the practical strengths that become apparent when you actually use the Thunderobot 018 Pro. The most obvious is the display. Thunderobot markets it as a Bionic Hummingbird eye-care panel, and after a couple of hours of gaming, I noticed the screen's flicker-free technology and higher brightness helped reduce eye strain. The 2.5K resolution strikes a nice balance. It's sharper than a 1080p panel but doesn't demand as much GPU horsepower as a full 4K screen. When you crank the RTX 5090 up to 260W, you can keep most modern titles solidly above 60 frames per second at high settings, and the 240Hz refresh rate actually translates into smoother motion during fast-paced shooters. Thermal performance, which is often the Achilles heel of high-power laptops, also feels decent. Thunderobot's strong heat dissipation system uses a combination of vapor chamber cooling and multiple heat pipes. In a 30-minute stress test playing Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings, the laptop's CPU and GPU clocks dipped only marginally, and the top of the chassis stayed around 80 C. That's warm, but not enough to trigger thermal throttling. For a machine pushing a 5090 GPU, that's a respectable trade-off, and it means you can game for an hour without the laptop screaming for attention. The keyboard is another area where this laptop shows its intention. The perky RGB not only looks cool, it also offers tactile feedback that feels satisfying for long typing sessions. I tried a few hours of coding and writing, and the key travel was enough to keep my fingers comfortable without being too mushy. The built-in IR camera is 1080p and works well for Face ID login or quick video calls. It's a nice touch for people who need to hop onto a Zoom meeting between gaming rounds. On the downside, a few practical weaknesses become hard to ignore once the hype settles. First, battery life. With a 92Wh battery, you might expect a few hours of desktop mode usage, but the reality is that under gaming load the laptop drops to under 3 hours before you need to plug in. Even on light tasks like web browsing, you're looking at around 56 hours, which isn't terrible for a laptop this powerful, but it does mean you'll need a charger handy if you plan to game on the go. Weight and size are also a factor. At roughly 2.8 kilograms, about 6.2 pounds, and an 18-inch footprint, the 018 Pro won't fit comfortably in a standard airline-approved laptop bag. I had to use a dedicated sleeve that added another inch.